Not ready. Well, folks, we're live anyway. It really doesn't matter. So, ready or not, here we go. The Chiefs have a schedule. It is out. It is interesting, I have to say. And who knows exactly how it's going to boil down. But we're going to walk you through it tonight live as the schedule is released for the NFL here on Locked On Chiefs.
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
Welcome back, everybody. It is anticipated, maybe this year more than most, but welcome to the schedule release live show. You guys have been asking for one of them here on the channel. We are the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day for free on every major platform, including this one live on YouTube. You will hear this on audio here in a little bit, but we are, half an hour into the schedule release show. We understand who's coming where, who's coming to KC, when and where, and all of that. Make sure you make us your first listen. We appreciate that, but also check out other shows on the network. I'm Ryan Tracy, the founder of Rogue Analytics and Performance Consulting. We are available for you for the Matrix and everything else. Check them out.
And I'm Chris Clark, founder of Chiefs Corner. You can go find me at Chiefs Corner, as this says on the live stream. So KC Chiefs Corner, that's where you can find me. A lot to talk about when it comes to this schedule.
Yeah, I'm just looking at it, and for me, like, there's going to be 1,000 tweets tonight about strength of schedule, right? But I'm just looking game by game by game by game. How many am I concerned about? And there are some. There are good teams on here. There's the Super Bowl champion on this schedule. Then quickly followed up by the Super Bowl loser from last year that beat the Chiefs twice. So assuming that they are maybe not they're as good as last year, but they're definitely going to be good, I have to think. That's definitely, for me, the toughest section of the schedule. We'll talk about that here coming up later. But for me, when I look at it, I don't see this as insurmountable. I think that it's perfectly reasonable to expect the Chiefs to go 13-4. That's what it looks like for me off the top. What do you think?
I'm thinking 12-5 or 11-6. I'm actually kind of leaning towards 11-6. I think that they're going to drop a game that I think that they probably should win. That just seems to be what they do every year. So I'm looking at this schedule. It is brutal throughout. And you're right. That is a very hard, you have the Chargers who gave them a hard enough time last year. Then you have the Rams, then you have the Bengals. That's all something, at the very, in the middle of the schedule. That's going to be brutal. So it's going to be rough.
Yeah. I think Thanksgiving through the beginning of December is going to be a rough stretch, folks. We will break that down here later in the show in the second half. But when I look at teams, those are certainly three that can challenge them. They get to see their old foe in Drew Lock because he'll be back with the Seahawks. That helps late. Very interesting to me what happens in the second half. But to get off the beginning, I think everybody's going to look at one particular game, and it might set the tone for the whole first half of the season. And that is week 4 against the Tampa Bay Bucs. They get to relive and re-execute against Tom Brady, probably for the last time, given that he just signed a $375 million contract to become a broadcaster, which I find very, very interesting, given that I think that's at least twice what Tony Romo makes. And Tom has a personality. I just don't think it's anywhere near as big as Tony Romo's.
Yeah, he's definitely going to be getting paid quite a lot of money. It's actually more money on a per-year basis than he's made at any point in his career on a year-to-year deal. So something to watch there. I'm very surprised that they announced that agreement. I think that it originally came out that there was going to be 20 to 25 million, which was even still higher than what Romo's making right now. And now it's being reported at 37.5. So that's quite a lot of chunk of change. So I would be hard pressed to see Tom Brady playing another year past this.
So that's certainly a game that I think you have to highlight. As you were looking at 11-6, I'm thinking more 13-4, but that's one of the ones that you have to think that is a significant obstacle, right, against the Buccaneers on October 2nd.
Yeah, I have it down as a loss on mine. I think that you look at that game and it's going to Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay is going to have a lot of their team back. They're still going to be missing maybe a couple of guys from injury that are still trying to come back. But, the other thing with Kansas City is I think that they're going to have, with so many people on defense trying to get ready for this season, they're going to have to adjust. They're going to have to get ready. And I think it could take them a little bit longer than than you would want it to. So I could see a loss in this game.
I agree. That is going to be the fourth professional contest for what are likely 4 or 5 defensive starters that have to try and slow down Tom Brady. That's a recipe. Call him the GOAT if you want. That's fine. But on 3 weeks experience in the league at full speed, I find it very hard for those rookies to be able to compete and not just be, quite frankly, taken advantage of by the most experienced quarterback in the league.
Well, and the bigger question I have isn't necessarily just on defense. It's also how is the offense going to mesh early on in this season because they have a lot of new pieces. I understand Patrick Mahomes is Patrick Mahomes. He's fantastic. He's great. But a lot of questions when it comes to how is he going to mesh with all the wide receivers and how's that going to play out? How many points are they going to be averaging those first couple of weeks?
On the positive side, Todd just can't sit back in those 3 deep zones and expect to take away one receiver and one tight end and win a ball game. So whether they're meshing or not, I think you're right. That's a legitimate concern. But having what I expect to be at least 4 targets, maybe 5 targets that are viable in that game, I think that's going to stress the Tampa Bay defense in a way that we didn't see the last time those 2 teams met.
Well, and the bigger thing that is going to happen with that Tampa Bay team is you're going to have an offensive line that can protect Patrick Mahomes. That is something he absolutely did not have the last time they met, and that's a huge difference maker.
Yeah, that is a luxury that you got to be happy to have. So right now, I would go out on a limb and I'd put money down at 13-4. That's where I'm sitting. And if I'm going to do that, I'm going to do it at BetOnline because that's where you can get those things done with all the odds and all the information you have, not just my personal opinion, but all the stats behind it, all the developments that you need to know. You can get all that information, not just for this football season and what you might be putting on this schedule, but for the NHL playoffs, for the NBA season, for baseball, if anybody still watches that, even for MMA and everything else. You can get it all at one place to help your sports wagering information that makes you a smarter, better, and gets you on the line in a better way with less risk. Head over to the website today. You can find it from any device. It's BetOnline, where the game starts. So as we take a look at this first half of the schedule, the Chiefs' bye week is week 8. So that's kind of a change, to tell you the truth. We've seen later bye weeks for the Chiefs, the last 3 seasons running?
Yeah, they've been much later than it is this year. I was really hoping for a week 10 bye week to get ready for that onslaught of games that they're going to have that week.
Yeah, agreed. Like
that next couple of weeks anyway. Sorry.
That would have been an advantage. I mean, I prefer a later one as always. This clearly says that there is some kind of rotation paradigm to the way that they make the schedule, because I don't think it's just setting some teams up to fail. Like we've seen people rumor in years past. This just feels like it's their time. Now, luckily, the roster is getting quite a bit younger for the Kansas City Chiefs, so I don't think it's as important as it was a season ago or 2 seasons ago. But I will say this. It doesn't start out very easily. And I don't mean the Arizona Cardinals. I'm actually not scared of the Cardinals. They're going to open with them in the afternoon game on CBS, folks, on September 11th. That is game number 1.
Without Hopkins, which I think is a benefit.
Right, exactly. And with a Kyler Murray that had maybe the most tumultuous offseason of any quarterback still on a roster. I'm not concerned about that. They did get one of my favorite pass rushers in Cam Thomas. He's got to learn from J.J. Watt, but I don't think he's going to be a force yet in week 1. I just don't see that happening. That's not what I'm concerned about. It's that 4 days later, you have to play the Los Angeles Chargers on Thursday night. That's what I'm concerned about.
Yeah, and that's a big problem. I still have it as a victory because I think Kansas City is going to win at home. And I'll just say this now. I think they probably lose against the Chargers in Los Angeles. I think they split those games, as I'll just say it that way. When you look at that game on Thursday night, the Chiefs have a huge advantage in the fact that they play at home. They don't have to travel to Los Angeles, which is going to throw them off even more. So I think that's going to help as well.
Yeah, I can certainly see that. After that, they get a nice little break. They come back, and they get the Indianapolis Colts, old friend Chris Ballard. He's been doing some things there. They get a refreshed Matt Ryan with a chip on his shoulder. And this could be one of those things where we've seen him not descend, I wouldn't say, but fall off like ever so slightly. Like it has not been a plummet. It's been kind of like a straight line, right? But an angry Matt Ryan that's got something to prove after the way that his former team went after Deshaun Jackson. I'm sorry, Deshaun Jackson. Deshaun, I hope you make a roster as well. But Deshaun Watson, and then trade him away. Like I feel that like we're going to get a bump out of performance from Matt Ryan this year. That feels consistent to me.
Yeah, and that wouldn't shock me. The question I have when it comes to Matt Ryan is how is that going to work going into a new offense, going to a new team? So if he's able to adjust early, I think that's going to make the schedule harder for Kansas City. But I still think that this is a game that they can go and they can win, especially with Matt Ryan coming in as a new guy. And the other thing is Indianapolis' offense has really been run through the running backs the past couple of seasons. And I think Kansas City is going to be better against the run this year than they have been in the past.
Yeah, I agree. This is Leo Chanel's coming out party, as far as I'm concerned, because they should be in base more. He should be on the field more. He should be a guy that has the athleticism to fill gaps and try to limit Jonathan Taylor to what is not an all-day performance. Whether that happens or not is going to be interesting. Matt Ryan will be throwing to Michael Pittman. He'll be the guy they have to focus on the offensive side. They have some tight ends. They have new Alec Pierce, who I really like as a fit, but I don't know 3 games in the season if he's going to be somebody that can take advantage of the Chiefs offense. I'm sorry, of the Chiefs defense. And then Paris Campbell is a question mark at their slot spot. Right now, that's who I have probably being their third starter, but he's had a serious injury string. Like the pass game doesn't bother me that much. It's about stopping Taylor.
Yep. And if they can stop Taylor, I think that they can win that game. And I still think Mahomes in the offense is going to be a work in progress throughout the season, but I still think they're going to be able to put up enough points, especially against Indy, to win that game. And really, that gets us to the Tampa Bay game, which we've already talked about. It is a huge game. I would love to see Kansas City win that game, and I think they have the ability to. It's just a question of whether or not their offense and their defense are clicking on all cylinders for that game. And I just think it could be just a little bit early for that defense to be ready for it.
Yeah, and that's fair. And then we should say the Chargers game week 2 on the rest is prime time on Amazon. This is going to be the first year Thursday night games are on Amazon Video. You're going to have to stream that, folks. Get ready for that. Then they come back. The Tampa game is on NBC in prime time late that night. And then they come back with the Raiders. That's week 5, October 10th. That's also the night game. Thursday night game, I believe, is how that is coming out. Is that right? On the 10th?
That's a Monday night.
Is it a Monday?
Monday
okay.
night.
I got to get my
which actually gives them a short
here.
week for the next game, which is Buffalo, which isn't great. But
that's exactly where I was going to like. And I'm guilty. Everyone on RGR saw me totally forget that Devontae Adams is in the AFC West for the Raiders. That's going to be hard enough distracting him, but then on a short week to come back against what I think is the most difficult game of the first half is the Buffalo Bills, who I think have done just as much to retool as the Chiefs have this season. And we all know that it came down to 13 seconds at the end of last year. I think that is the highlight of the first half for the Chiefs.
I'm not so sure it's not the highlight game of the year for the Chiefs. Mm-hmm. I know they have a tough slate of games, but I don't know that there's one game that's going to be harder than the Bills game. Buffalo is a fantastic team. I think that they have a great chance of winning the AFC this year. So I'm going to say that. I think Kansas City has the opportunity to win the AFC, but they have, if you look at this schedule, you look at the rest of the schedule, it is brutal. And they're going to have a fight just in their own division.
Yeah, that's for sure. And so now we've covered the first 5 games. 3 of them have been at night. That's jumping in the fire for what is a rookie class that has to put in some significant snaps, even that early in the season. So that's tough. They come back, and game 7 is the San Francisco 49ers. It's at San Francisco. It is an afternoon game on October 23rd. I'll be very interested to see the progression of Trey Lance to that point. I expect him to be the starter there. We could see Garoppolo. It just doesn't feel to me like he's going to stay there. If that's the case, I feel better about that game than having to deal with a mobile and ferociously athletic Trey Lance. Does that set you up for any concern?
Well, I think Trey Lance is a concern, but I think the other thing that you have to wonder about right now is what are they going to do with Deebo Samuel? I mean, he's still sitting there saying he's not going to play for San Francisco. So I would imagine he shows up and if he plays, and that's going to be a harder game. If he doesn't show up and he's holding out because he's, doesn't want to play there, that's a whole nother ballgame, and that completely changes that game.
Well, I will say this too. I'd have to double check the date, but I believe that is 6 days before the trade deadline. So that's going to be very, very interesting story there going through San Francisco week.
Yep,
Then they get to
definitely
the
is.
bye week. How do you feel like, where do you see their record at the bye having played 7 games?
4-3.
Yeah.
Or
I'm
maybe 5-2. I mean, I'm still of the opinion that they're going to lose one game that we think that they probably shouldn't, and it could be early on because their defense is still adjusting and their offense is still trying to mesh with all the new wide receivers and weapons.
I have them at 5-2 through 7 games in the first half and to the bye week. So we'll see where it comes out, but that's how it feels to me, at least tonight.
Yeah. And now let me tell you about our friends over at Built Bar. Imagine dipping your finger into a plastic tub of birthday cake frosting and then opening your eyes and realizing that it was only 150 calories and 16 grams of protein. That is what it is like to eat a birthday cake puff from Built Bar. I just received my birthday cake puffs, and I've never had anything like this before. They are very delicious. I really enjoy them. They're available right now, and we can't promise that they will be there tomorrow, so get them today at Built.com. And if you haven't tried the puffs, I'll let you in on a little secret, because that's what friends do. A chocolate-covered marshmallow protein bar. Yes, you did hear me right. A chocolate-covered marshmallow protein bar. It is absolutely delicious. With 150 calories, 16 grams of protein, and 9 sugar, this limited-time flavor is an amazing option if you're looking for a healthy way to get flavor and variety in your day. All Built Puffs are covered in 100% real chocolate. That means with Built, you can eat healthy and actually enjoy doing it. Go to Built.com to get birthday cake puffs now. Go to Built.com, use promo code LOCK15, and you'll get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at Built.com.
Can I just say something before we get to the Tennessee Titans that will start the second half of the season for the Chiefs? I love what the NFL does, and I particularly love it this year because they're not messing around. They're putting Russell Wilson and the Denver Broncos up week 1 in primetime against his former team right off the bat. One of his prime receivers got arrested today. Like, the whole thing is just setting up to be a cavalcade of pressure for the Denver Broncos, which I think the Chiefs should enjoy week 1.
They should enjoy it, but the funny thing about that is Seattle doesn't have a quarterback, so should be a pretty easy win for Denver, in my opinion, at least with the way things sit right now.
Yeah, the revenge factor, I don't know. Maybe Drew Lock puts one game together. You Mizzou fans got to love that, right? That could be revenge. That could be fun. Let's hope. So the Chiefs come back. Right, yeah. So the Chiefs are back. And they open the second half of the season with the Tennessee Titans. Again in primetime on NBC that night. So that's Sunday Night Football. I want to say that this should be a good matchup. But without Julio and without A.J. Brown, Treylon Burks is a decent player, but I just don't see the impact being able to live up to what A.J. was. This doesn't
not this
feel
early
like
in his career.
Right? And even though this team was the AFC number 1 seed last year, I just don't see this being a matchup that the Chiefs lose. Do you?
No, I think this is a win for him. I look at this game. I called it a win. I think that Kansas City is going to run away with this game, quite honestly, especially coming off a bye. The one thing they could possibly keep Kansas City keep the Titans in it is if Derrick Henry has a 200-yard game. I do not expect that with this defense. I do think they're going to be able to not shut him down, but at least keep him under control. So I think that that's going to play into Kansas City's advantage. And Ryan Tannehill is Ryan Tannehill. He's not going to beat you with the wide receivers they have, at least with the way that he's been playing the past couple of years. And you're right, he doesn't have A.J. Brown, and Treylon Burks is not A.J. Brown at this point in his career. He's nowhere close.
I expect a Frank Clark sighting that night.
Yeah.
It might be the highlight of Frank's season. I don't know.
And I'm really surprised that's a primetime game. I get it because the Titans were the number 1 seed last year. Right. The interesting thing, we talked about week 6 in Buffalo being a 325 game. Everything I saw on Twitter talking about that game today, everybody was saying they were surprised it wasn't primetime. It wasn't a night game. Everything I saw said CBS said that this is going to be our game. We're not giving it up. Now, if they have the option to do that because it's an all AFC game, then that makes sense as to why they did it. And it's a 3:30 start, so it's going to be Romo and Nance.
Yeah, right. And correct me if I'm wrong, but the flex scheduling doesn't come into play that early in the season, does it?
No, it doesn't come into play until we think week 10.
Yeah, okay. That's kind of where I was leaning to. So yeah, it looks like that's set in stone. And hey, good for CBS. They got to keep something, right? Because matchups are hard to find in this league, and I think that's going to be another barn burner. Hopefully, it's a little bit more than 13 seconds, but we'll find out. The Chiefs come back second week of November with the Jacksonville Jaguars. They've made some strides. I think that they're certainly fighting through the hangover. I mean, it's Sunday morning, and they're frying eggs and stuff, trying to get right after a long Saturday night with the Urban Meyer era down there. The only thing that even concerns me a little bit about the Jaguars is Doug Peterson's presence and him understanding how to attack Spags in particular.
Yeah, and I can see that. The thing that's going to help Kansas City is it's two things, actually. One, they play at home. Two, it's still Jacksonville. I'm not saying Trevor Lawrence can't be a good quarterback. I think he will be. He's not there yet, and they're going to have to score a ton of points to beat this team. I think the defense is starting at this point in the season. I think the defense has started to gel and get to a point where they're playing better, and they're keeping teams down closer to where we expect them to be.
I like that. Yeah, that's a very good point. Knock on wood, anyway. And then we get to the week before Thanksgiving.
Brutal.
Yeah, this is a 3-game stretch. This is the gotcha moment. This is the 3-game stretch in this schedule for the Kansas City Chiefs that will turn their season one way or the other. This is the toughest part. It is the Los Angeles Chargers in LA, afternoon game on the November 20th. They come back, afternoon game on Fox, against the Rams at home on the 27th. Then they come back again at the Bengals on December 4th, afternoon game on CBS. They got to win 2 of these, in my opinion, to get to a spot where they have even an inkling of a chance at the number 1 seed in the AFC.
I agree with that. I don't think that they win 2 of them. I think that they win 1 of them. I do think that they have the ability to beat the Bengals and to beat the Rams.
Uh-huh.
It's just you got to put together every single snap for both games. I think the Bengals are going to be better than they were last year. Their offensive line is going to be better, which is going to make it to where Joe Burrow isn't under as much pressure. The question is did Kansas City learn from their mistakes last season in the playoffs?
That will be the question. Can Justin Reed help over the top of Jamar Chase now that Charvarius Ward, I have to say, I love the McDuffie pick. I expect that because of his presence and his ability, that the Chiefs will be able to mirror wide receiver ones this season. So I would expect L'Jarius Sneed to be on Jamar Chase for the bulk of that day if he's available and no one's gotten injured through the season, whatever. We know how that goes. But it also comes down to Spags making adjustments over the top as well. And I think that will be what the game turns on. I think some of their run last year was a little bit lucky.
Fluky.
And And I have to say, it comes down to how much pressure the Chiefs can get. Is Karlaftis the right pick? Does he make the difference against that particular offensive line unit? Because at that point, hopefully Frank Clark is starting to wake up. That's about when he shows up in the season, right? Chris Jones will be Chris Jones. And hopefully they've developed a package that either they have 4 pass rushers with Karlaftis inside, Melvin Ingram on the outside, which is hopefully what we expect the roster to be, or they found someone else to rush from the DT next to Chris Jones, because I think they need 4 legitimate pass rushers against that unit, because they got to get in Joe Burrow's face. Even the 9-sack game last year didn't keep them from winning. It's an imperative in my mind that you have to get rush on him.
Yeah, you absolutely have to. And that's why you look at what the Chiefs have in cap space, and you have to wonder if they're going to make some more moves to try to bring in more pass rush. There are a couple of guys out there. They could still bring in another corner. Bradbury's still out there. I mean, there's other players that can come in and help at different points. We still think Melvin Ingram's going to be here, but he's not right now. So, that's a big question as to how they're going to adjust and how they're going to get pressure. But we did talk about Karlaftis, going down inside, being next to Jones. If Ingram is here, that gives them 4 guys that can get after the passer. Yeah.
I hope that they can develop that. I don't know if we have to call that a NASCAR at that point or not. I would expect Karlaftis can probably play in the 3-point down there. He could be standing up too. So that's the package we want to see develop before that game so that they can deploy it effectively. That's another storyline that we're going to have to follow all season long. And at that point, after the 4th, after the Bengals, the Chiefs get to take a little bit of a breath. They get to kind of reset.
A little bit of a breath?
Well, I'm trying to be respectful.
That's fair.
But what they get
compared to the last 3 games, this is huge. I mean, it's a huge breath.
Right. Exactly. Because after the Cincinnati Bengals on December 4th, the next 4-game run includes the Denver Broncos twice, the Houston Texans, and the Seattle Seahawks. Now, I actually think the Broncos are going to be improved with Russ Wilson under there. The question is, what has the season done to them? This is really interesting to me that the NFL put the Broncos game so tight again when it was what was it, 2 weeks apart last year? At the end of the season, all in December again. I don't know what that theme is, but I like it.
For some reason, the NFL seems to do this with multiple different teams. It's not just Kansas City, Denver. I mean, I've seen it on other schedules when you look at it. For some reason, you get into December and you have divisional teams playing twice. And it's like, okay, well, they just didn't fit together in good places elsewhere. So this is how they get them in.
I think that's certainly a winnable stretch. It all, in my opinion, depends on how Russ is cooking. That's what it comes down to. And then they finish the season, and it will be either the 7th or the 8th. We won't know until that actually happens, against the Las Vegas Raiders. We don't know when. We don't know what network. We don't know any of that. But the last game of the regular season will be against the Raiders, and I think it will be for the AFC title between the Chargers and the Chiefs. And I think the Raiders will be looking to play the role of spoiler again. Am I wrong?
So you think that the Chiefs and the Chargers are going to be playing for the number 1 seed?
No, I'm just talking about the AFC West title, but it would effectively
title.
be the first versus maybe the 2nd or 3rd seed too as well.
Well, you said AFC title, so I just want to clarify.
Sorry,
I think the Bills
AFC
are
West.
No, it's fine. I do think that the Chargers and the Chiefs are the cream of the crop in this division this year. I think that Kansas City is still going to win it. I think 11-6 gets it done. Like I said, I wouldn't be surprised at 12-5, and even better than that is possible. It's just a question of how this team plays and how they play early, and how this defense with all these rookies plays. This defense is going to have struggles at times because they're rookies. They've got to play. They've got to work through that. That's going to happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's something to expect, and that's actually fine. I mean, you expect that, you know it's coming, and it's going to be one of those things. So I think Kansas City is going to be playing for seeding in that last game. The question, obviously, we don't know. Like you said, we don't know when that game is specifically. I don't know that Las Vegas is really going to be a team that's going to be challenging for any kind of playoff position at that point. So we'll have to see how that plays out. But it's interesting that they're making all those to be determined dates. It looks like on the entire NFL schedule. So we're not going to find out exactly when that game is going to be played until probably week 17. So it's going to be a lot of fun. I think that, the thing that's interesting to me is you look at Vegas on October 10th. You play them on a Monday night on October 10th, and you don't play them again until January.
Yeah,
that's going to be a different team from one time to the next.
Yeah, absolutely.
New
I
coach,
like that.
New players, but it's going to be a lot of fun to see how that rivalry continues to grow.
And let's remember, too, the Raiders are not without their controversy this year, too. They just fired somebody internally for reporting the lack of a professional workplace. So there's a whole lot of other things that can change beside this as we go through. Now, we gave our predictions for record. Chris is at 11-6. I'm at 13-4. We thank you for making us your first listen. Make sure you grab another Locked On show for that. But I also want to say, it's very interesting to me this year about seeds, because seeds are that much more important. I think at least 2 teams from the AFC West will make the playoffs. I think the Chiefs will be the top seed of them. But I'm having trouble saying they'll be the top seed. What do you think?
That's exactly why I asked about your AFC title question earlier, your AFC title comment earlier. I do think that they have an opportunity to make the number 1 seed, but they're going to have to play pretty flawless, and they absolutely have to win that Bills game. And don't forget, Kansas City did beat the Bills in the playoffs, but they lost at home. They lost in the regular season, and it wasn't a close game. So, early in the season, I think that favors Buffalo mainly because most of their team is back. They have the same pieces. They have the same offense. They have the same defense. They added pieces that are going to help their team. I think it favors Buffalo. Not saying Kansas City can't win. I hope they prove me wrong. But until I see them on the field and see how these rookies are coming in, that's a big question, because you're going up against one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL with a wide receiver room that has a lot of weapons.
Yeah. Okay, so bottom line, where do you think the Chiefs are seated I assume you think they make the playoffs.
Oh yeah, they make the playoffs. I think they're 2 or 3. It's really going to depend. I haven't looked enough at the rest of the schedule to know whether or not I think that teams are going to come out of how they're going to come out of their divisions. Indianapolis, if they get on a run, Jacksonville and Houston, those are horrible teams. I mean, you could basically have 4 almost bye weeks in that scenario. So, who comes out of the AFC? What is their record going to be? The AFC North is going to be brutal with at least 3 of the 4 teams, I think. So it's just hard to know. But I think that they're the 2 or 3 seed. I think they have an opportunity to be 1. If they beat the Bills in week 6, they could be the number 1 seed. But they can't lose that game and be the number 1 seed.
Agreed. I will say they're going to be the number 2. I think they're going to come up just short because of other factors not having to do with their play on the field. But I think it's also going to come down to the Chiefs are playing the Raiders that day, but the Broncos are playing the Chargers as well. And I think it may come down to needing the Broncos to beat the Chargers in order to get that 1 seed.
That'll be interesting. Be lots to see, and I'm very curious to see how the season plays out. I cannot wait for training camp to see these guys get the pads on and to see them be able to play. I cannot wait for the preseason to see how these guys are able to stack up and go against other NFL competition.
Yeah.
Lots to look forward to.
Hope you guys are ready because we certainly are. This has been the Schedule Release live stream. Glad that you were here with us, for all of you that were there, as well as everybody's listening here on the audio as well. Thanks for subbing and doing all the things on YouTube and all your iTunes reviews. We appreciate it. We'll be back with you next week. As always, as we get ready for this season, we should have more on field coming soon. Thanks for being with us tonight. We'll talk to you next time.